Welcome, everyone. I want to get started. So thank you for all being here this evening. This is a timely topic. I think it's super important that we address what is commonly experienced. Obviously, it's more relevant. People going into the fall and into the holidays, people call it the cold and flu season. I have another name for it. I often call it the low vitamin D season because we start to go indoors, we don't get as much vitamin D, and so then our immune system starts to plummet. So that's a quick punchline. If you didn't watch anything else, just get more vitamin D. Have a good night. But hopefully you stick around and watch the rest because beyond that, there's a lot we can do to work on what's called the terrain. Our body is, you think of it like a field and you have good lush grass growing in that field. There's no room for weeds. But if we don't have that field maintained, then there's room for anything to grow in there, right? And so if it's the things that are floating around, something's going around like this virus, that bacteria, that infection. Well, who are the ones that get it? The ones that have room for the weeds, right? They don't have the resistance. They don't have the barrier. They don't have the defenses primed and energized to do their work. We didn't evolve this long on this planet without a defense. We have an immune system. But when we are chronically suppressed because we're doing fight or flight all the time, our energy is diverted, right? And so the topic tonight is about self-defense. I like martial arts and it's kind of my thing. So bringing that together is kind of a fun blend from my point of view. So let's get into this topic. One of the principles that we learn right off the bat in chiropractic knowledge is, your body is self-healing and it's self-regulating. Cut your finger, you don't need a doctor to coach your finger on how to heal that. You just need to stop cutting, right? It's self-regulating. You go to bed, your heart rate will continue as needed throughout the night. If you go for a run, it'll accelerate to match the need. And then when you stop running, it'll slow down again to match your need. Same with your breathing. If you need to digest something, hey, there's a presence of something in my stomach. Oh, look at that. We need to release digestive juices to make that happen, right? When digestion is done, the stomach actually then opens up. The walls come down in the stomach to finish the digestion process. And then when it's done, the bottom one opens up. Okay, on to your next stage, small intestine, right? But that is all sensed and regulated on the inside. And that whole process is run by our nervous system. Okay, all the sensing that happens runs through the spinal cord up to the brain, and then it's sent down from the brain to those organs, to those parts. But what interferes with that is whether it's stress, and today we're going to talk a lot about inflammation, chronic inflammation in particular, and how those represent burdens for the body that can distract it from what it's meant to do, what it's normally doing. So when these things back up, these processes back up, then we are not able to adapt as well as we want to. So real goal of health is to be more adaptable, right? It's not about chasing away all the bad germs because we would spend the rest of our lives and we would still fail. We'd have to leave the planet, right? If we don't want germs, we have to leave planet Earth. But the reality is we've co-evolved with these germs. We have 10 to 1 more germs living in and on us than we have of ourselves. We are more of a provider of services for the germs than they are for us. We have 500 trillion microbes of all kinds living in and around us, and only 50 trillion of us. So, and realizing that there's a whole ecosystem that works together if it's healthy, but when it's not working properly, problems, right? So that's, again, that field that has the open patch over there. Oh boy, what's going to grow there? Get some grass seed planted fast. In our body, if you take antibiotics or if you have something that irritates and inflames you, you better make sure you're repopulating with the good stuff, right? Your lifestyle needs to reset ASAP. Otherwise, we start to go in a downward cycle. So the same thing about, we talk about stress. It can overwhelm your capacity and your immune system starts to break down. Just like I said, there's only so much energy and so much attention that your body can pay, right? There's only so much. And if it's directed towards survival, well, something that would kill you in 3 weeks will get put on hold. Like that infection won't kill me for another couple, 3 weeks. But this tiger that's chasing me down that needs attention. So all my energy is going to go to my muscles. It's going to go to my cardiovascular system, circulate all the fatty acids and all the things all the energy that my body needs. Deal with that now. The problem is we don't live with tigers chasing us anymore, but we live with, you know, bills and documents and bosses and different things that like we assign as threatening, right? We think, oh, well, that's a big deal for me. That represents a challenge that I need to deal with. And then we get so worked up about it on the same level, becoming stressful and therefore chronic stress. And that chronic stress, it's still the same signal saying we have a problem here. The immune system still gets denied. So adaptation leads to resilience, which leads to immunity. All right. So the stress triangle. There's three main categories of our environment. There's the physical, there's the chemical, and there's the emotional. And that doesn't mean that any of them are bad. There can be good stressors, but generally when we talk about stress, physical stress could be an injury, like an accident, but it also could be progressive, like bad posture, looking at my phone, looking at my computer. Emotional, stressful could be my own thoughts. I could be my own worst enemy, just telling myself negative things, belittling myself, carrying on voices from somebody else in my past. It could be I don't see possibility, I don't see my strength or my potential. But it also can be relationships. It can be being in a place that does not allow you to thrive, does not encourage you, does not inspire you. And then chemical, it's either the lack of the things you need. You don't have the right building blocks, you can try to build the house, but if you don't have mortar, you just have bricks. Well, excuse me, somebody should know that there's no mortar. I don't care, build it anyway. Well, all right, you're going to find out pretty soon that that's not going to last. And in your body, you can make do without vitamin D, but meanwhile, your immune system is going to teeter and shift into a zone that is not helpful, right? And if you flip all those around, physical stress could be exercise. It's stress, right? It's more than what you're used to. If you're going to carry your body weight like this, or if you're going to carry a weight, that's more than you're used to. And it's something that you can handle for a little while, but that challenge will cause you to adapt. And you will learn, and tomorrow you will be more adapted to whatever you just did, as long as it's not too much to become an injury, right? Emotional stress. Well, for a child, let's say, a child who is not used to being away from their parents, get super clingy when they're like 2, 3, somewhere that realm. And then, oh, it's okay. When you're 4 years old, you're going to go to pre-K, and then 5-year-old, you're going to go to kindergarten for the day. Are you going to be there, when I finish this day? Yeah, it's going to be okay. The teacher's got you. It's okay. You're going to be fine. Learning that, right? That separation, that challenge to the system. Look at you did it all by yourself. You calmed yourself down, right? You're able to do it. Chemical stress. So on the good side, think about something like ketogenic diets. Everybody familiar with those?
Not super.
Kind of. Well, let's just say, real simply, there's two main fuels for the body. There's sugar or there's fat. And the one part of the body that gets super agitated by not being fueled properly is the brain. It consumes the most energy in the body, 30%. Mm. When the brain doesn't get enough energy, we feel it. When you're sick and the immune system goes from 20% of your energy expenditure to 60, when you're having acute illness, that's why you're like, oh, I'm not feeling right. I need to sit down. I think I'm going to call in today. I need to rest. Right? What happened? I don't know. I don't feel anything. And then later on, the sniffles, and later on, the coughing. Like, oh, I was coming down with something. Because your immune system went from 20 to 60, right? And your brain started to say, hey, I don't have enough for me anymore. So the point about this is if you if you challenge your system to have a little less of what it normally gets, like sugar, and then your body's saying, well, I need some energy. Well, hey, we've got some fat we can burn. Yeah, but we haven't gotten to that point where we're fasted enough, where the system is really sending enough signals to say, hey, you know what? there's a fat storage over there. Why don't you burn that? Um, okay, I'm convinced. And it gets to a point where now, all right, let's start burning that. Yeah, but you just gave me a whole bunch of sugar at lunch. Okay, forget that idea. Not going to do that anymore. But then another fasting day. Okay, you know what? You started doing that consistently. I remember that we have that engine too, and that's what ketogenic dieting is like. Okay, if you start to train this system that we have an ability for, feeding the brain what it needs, it turns those fats into ketones. And the brain can run on ketones, which is what fat turns into ketones. The brain can burn off of that as well as sugar. But either way, the brain's got to get something. But in the transition from sugar, which the brain is super happy about, that's like a comfort food is so great. Like, you know what I mean? Just happy, right? Because your brain's getting plenty of energy, but it's not great for the long term because excess, whatever we don't need, gets stored as fat. Because our body's smart. We used to be nomadic. And when you're nomadic, you don't always have food. So you pack it away. Let's put it somewhere. Natural backpacks. But it's ready for another march in the woods for a day when we don't have food. And then it'll go to that system, pull from the backpack and burn it. But we don't, we have a full refrigerator, full of that bison that we didn't have to go out every morning. It's there. We don't have to go work for it for the first half of the day, like our hunter-gatherer ancestors did. We're looking at every bird in the morning, right? Every bird wakes up in the morning. It doesn't have any food on its plate. It's like we gotta go work, we gotta go burn energy, create the demand, and then it can find the food because it worked hard. Our physiology is very similarly designed, but we don't have that. So when we live in that imbalance on the global, too much of these different stressors and not enough of the good stuff, our system starts to get overwhelmed. That's what the purpose of this slide is. So the chiropractic foundation, chiropractic looks at, well, how is the body designed? Let's just build this health concept from the inside out, right? Your structure, the connections all depend on that pathway. The pathway from your brain to all the parts is your spine. Why? Because we need two things. We need protection of that spinal cord, of that pathway. It's got bone around the spinal cord to keep it safe, just like the brain has protection around it. But it also is our structure that holds us upright. And that structure gives us function. If we were spineless, we would be a blob on the floor. We wouldn't be able to move around, right? But we have that central core that we can, move our limbs around and be strong and move things around and move ourselves around. So the nervous system controls every single cell in the body, including your tissues and your organs. But specifically today, we're talking about the immune cells. They're the traveling T cells. You've heard of like T cells before, right? So there's T cells that float around that are fascinating kind of hybrids. They're considered traveling neurons because they sense and they release similar neurotransmitters with the same chemistry and messenger chemicals like neurons do. But neurons are just like, they're just wires, right? They just go around connecting to things. But the roving immune cells, like T helper cells, they can sense and they can release similar to what a neuron can do. So it'll pick up signals from the brain saying, oh, wow, I just picked up a whole bunch of signals saying there's a problem here. We might need to raise the temperature because there's a part of the hypothalamus. So there's a part of the brain that sticks into and has sensing of the blood. And so when enough particles are coming by that are viral or bacterial, this part of the brain senses that and says, hey, that's not good. The concentration went up. We need to raise the temperature. That's a backup system to kill things off. It's like oven cleaning, right? It's time to lock the door, crank up the temperature to 500. We're burning it out, right? We don't like it. Culturally, the Tylenol loves it because, hey, or ibuprofen, Advil, hey, we're going to help people lower that because nobody likes the feeling of it. It's uncomfortable. We feel bad. We feel awful. We're scared. Oh my God, you're going to burn up. But it doesn't really happen. Unless you have brain damage, you're not going to die from a fever. There's whole hospital systems that have declared this. There aren't any, unless a person came in with brain damage, You're not going to die from that. It's very, very rare is there a consequence of having a fever, but it's never comfortable. The shivers and I'm sweating. I can't figure out what to do. We put the covers on, take the covers off, come on and off. Those nights are brutal, right? But they're effective at killing off the virus. But back to the story, when the brain senses those particles, it says, okay, hey, rev up these, start releasing the chemicals that there's something invading us. We need to raise the temperature. So the thermostat, in effect, the wall thermostat goes up. We're going to maintain it up here now until further notice. And it's according to viral or bacterial, and the other way around. Bacterial is low, virus is actually high. And then those chemicals get released, those traveling immune cells sense that, and then they respond and start looking and start identifying and start figuring things out. So it's super fascinating how the information travels within the body of, hey, we're looking, it's 1,000 times more complicated than I'm sharing right now. And I don't understand all of a third of it, right? Or half, whatever. But the thing is, it's amazing. This whole system has evolved. It's capable of doing so many things specific to whatever invader. Plus, we also are born with a whole library of antibodies that our parents, our moms, give us. Okay. We get this whole set of antibodies from mom that help mom adapt to her environment, and it's passed on. It can be distracted, distorted, shifted, it can be modified, right? So it can be problematic, but generally we get, by 6 months, we get a decent amount of that to reestablish our own gut. When you're born, you're not sterile, but you don't have the same population of bacteria and ecosystem down here that you will later. But mom is the first donor of all those things that have passed on for millennia through our species. From here, spinal alignment plus motion. So we need it aligned, but we need it to move. And that helps to give the spine and the nervous system what it needs. The body's smart enough to be wired or built in such a way that to give the brain what it needs in terms of sensory information, we need all these little windmills to spin. The windmills are the vertebrae. We need them to spin, bend, twist, move, right? So we need them to be in proper alignment so their relationship is normal, but then they need to be active. And those little sensors, it's like moving the mouse on the counter or on the desk. When you move the mouse, you wake up the computer. It's the same thing in every single vertebra, but we need to do that every day. So the longer we're sedentary, the longer we sit, and the longer we don't move, that shuts us down. So that creates awareness and helps us shift into repair. And repair is the opposite of fight or flight. Those modes are on opposite ends. So inflammation is this response, right? So in general, acute inflammation, something just happened, right? We need that. That's a healing fire. All the resources go to that area. Like if you sprain your ankle, if you have, infection in your lungs, you need the body to send the resources there to get that thing out of there. But chronic inflammation is a destructive fire. That continues to wear down our resources. It starts to drain our body's energy and it stresses the immune system. It can basically overload. Just think about having too many 911 calls. We can't keep up and the fire department's going everywhere. Like, we can't put out all those fires, right? And when it comes to what inflammation really does, partly in terms of there's infections and then there's injury response. For an injury, for example, think about building a bridge, and there should be the right amount of workers to build that bridge. But imagine you had 5 or 10 crews instead of the one crew that you needed. And they just keep working. They're happy to add more boards, add more, steel and metal. And they're building this bridge with so much reinforcement. Like, guys, we didn't need that. What are you doing? Well, nobody ever called us off, And so what do we end up with? A ton of scar tissue at some sites where we had injury, especially when it's chronic injury. We never got it healed right. In chiropractic, we try to take those parts that need to be aligned and bring them together and help finish the job. But sometimes that windup of the inflammation can continue to go. beyond that time. How inflammation weakens immunity. I talked about it a little bit, but one thing, chronic inflammation. Anybody familiar with autoimmune conditions? Autoimmunity, somewhat? So I have what's called Hashimoto's thyroid, which is something that really has a potential for spikes. You can flare up or you can calm it down. All the autoimmune issues or conditions are similar, whether it's MS or fibromyalgia or celiac. They're all autoimmune conditions that have the potential to flare up. Now, inflammation, that whole process is energy draining. Like I was saying, that acute reaction is from 20 to 60% potentially of your energy consumption. So when you inflame, you're like, oh, I got brain fog. I can't concentrate. After I had that meal, not only am I just tired from digesting, but I just feel, whew, I'm just white this afternoon. Maybe there's something in the food that you're reacting to. So it can be an energy drain, depending on how intense that is. And the more the immune system is overworked and like those resources are spread, far and wide, they can become imprecise in their reactions. And being that instead of targeting what they're supposed to go after, they can go after something that is not really the target, like you. And that's how autoimmunity can develop, where it can confuse you for that thing they were supposed to go after. And then it becomes entrained on it, and it develops antibodies, and it has memory. And it says, yeah, every time you see that and you get flared up, attack that thing, knock it out. And that's what happens to different tissues. So for me, it was my thyroid. Some people, it's their brain and their nerve tissue. Some people, it's the lining of their intestinal tract. Some people, it's their muscle, different junctions, different joints. Rheumatoid arthritis, it's the joints. Tissue damage, also that same construction project of the bridge, right? They're over exuberant, right? Too much work, guys. Too much tearing down, too much building up, damaging the tissues. It can harm the healthy cells. Imagine these powerful immune cells going around that can destroy things. They can cause cells to die. They can just start killing off collateral cells around the area. And then overall system-wide dysfunction can happen. So where the system is just sending all this energy towards that problem. Tissue damage can also be in terms of like heart disease. You've heard of like arterial damage, right, from chronic inflammation. So the linings of our arteries can become damaged because of deposits, little fatty deposits, and that can attract inflammation, and that can lead to damage of those arteries. Those are all different versions of that story. Root cause of chronic inflammation. So this is kind of like when we look at what is driving this process. I've touched on some of them, but like unresolved infections, what that might be is like a gingivitis, for example, periodontal disease. It could be sinus infections that are just chronic background. It could be even chronic cough. Just something doesn't quite go away. Could be gut imbalances. It can be injuries that never quite healed, never got quite aligned in order to complete the healing process. Excess visceral fat, that releases inflammatory chemicals. Those cells release inflammatory chemicals all the time. Insulin resistance, similarly, when we have too much sugar, our insulin, when we have sugar in our diet, insulin raises. When we have chronically high sugar, insulin gets high for a while, but then the body says, hey, too much. And then the cells stop listening to the insulin. They block it out. They say, we're done following your orders. And then the insulin's rolling around creating inflammation. It's an inflammatory hormone. Autoimmune reactions can lead to chronic inflammation. Chronic stress can lead to it. Poor sleep and recovery. Again, an injury or an infection needs sleep. If you don't get enough, you didn't recover. And then it persists, leading to prolonged struggles with that inflammatory process. And then toxins or processed food. There's the things that the body says, what is that? What am I supposed to do with this thing? I don't have no evolutionary strategy to deal with this toxin, right? And foods are ultra processed, combined with this, combined with that, overcooked, radiated, all the different things, or even unripened, things that ship from across the planet and they were green when they were plucked and we're meant to eat it when it was ripe off the vine. We like it, but it's not great for us because our body says, hey, that's just not really ideal to have this green, whatever it was. And yes, maybe they were able to ripen it through a process, but really the chemistry didn't change of the fruit.
Is that right?
Can be. You wonder, like, why don't I do well with that? So our self-defense strategy. Right? So we need to protect ourselves from those things around us. It's just as a baseline, right? That's not something we need to go around fighting, but we need to go around being adaptable to those environments, which means we need to have our barriers and our guards and our internal systems ready to handle unwanted invaders, right? Opportunistic microbes that say, hey, this might be a nice place to live. And sorry, no room at the inn. Not for you. But if the barriers are weak, if the barriers have gaps, if the barriers are asleep, and the sentry, right, the little roving immune cells on the top of the castle walls are asleep or not energized, then those little opportunists can find their way in. Like, oh, well, how did that happen? Oh, that's right. I didn't sleep well for like 3 nights. I was drinking all that coffee. I was loading up on sugar because I was, grabbing whatever was available. And then all of a sudden I'm inflamed and then the barriers are open. So this goal is to reduce the sources of inflammation, repair what is damaged, and replenish what is depleted. Simple. So let's go into that. So first, reducing the inflammatory load. We want to eat colorful in season. That's why I brought that up. In season whole foods. Whole foods means that whatever container it's in has one ingredient, that thing. Shouldn't be any more ingredients in it. If there's any more ingredients, it's probably flavor enhancing, maybe some preservative, or I don't know. You could be anything. But the point is colorful as well, because the more colors of the rainbow you get, the more nutrient variety you get to fill in all those potential depletions. Choose pasture raised or wild caught, pasture raised meats or wild caught fish. Pasture raised, if you're familiar with omega 3s, fatty acids, way back when humans' brains expanded and grew into our more modern level of brain size, we were eating wild caught and pasture raised omega 3 containing foods. That's what allowed our brains to expand and to have this higher brain. Since the onset of more agriculture, we drifted away to more farm raised or even like the feed raised, grain fed, or even now farm raised fish. That takes away the natural source. So for livestock, for them to eat, all the grasses and all the things on the pasture, there's a lot of omega 3s in there that naturally get stored up in their flesh, which we eat. Same with the fish eating algae from the sea. That's what has just like you see krill oil, it's similar in concept, right? So those tiny little organisms create omega 3s, the fish eat it, and it works up the food chain. If they're wild caught, cold water, then they have more concentration of that. So you get it from your food. But lately our brains have begun to shrink. Evolutionary, we started to shrink our brains. Evidence is you've heard about crowding of teeth, right? Kids have to have teeth removed, and then these night guards and the braces to help to manage the smaller palate because the cranium has shrunk. I mean, the brain has shrunk, and so therefore we're trying to deal with this evolutionary change because we're not getting enough of the omega 3s to grow the same size brain. It's crazy. Our brains were bigger in the past. Sad.
Does that mean we were smarter?
Probably.
We
I mean,
have to,
not
right? I mean, you
not
got more of something.
in terms of our modern
Yeah,
education,
I know, but
but we're
they
probably
more of something.
for sure. Think about what we did as a species to be able to adapt to this planet without all the modern tools, right?
Mhm.
Um, so increasing omega-3s in general, that's a great way. You can get it from flaxseed and walnuts. You can get it, but it requires you to have an enzyme in enough quantity to convert it.
Mm.
Animal-based or fish-based omega-3s already have the EPA and the DHA ready to roll for you to use. Flaxseed has to be converted from ALA, alpha linoleic acid, to the EPA, DHA. DHA is for brain, EPA is for anti-inflammatory. They come naturally in a nice ratio, 3 to 2, from these animals and from the fish. No modification required. But when it comes to ALA, you have to convert it, and not everybody does that efficiently. And so then you, like vegetarians, have a tough time, or vegans have a tough time with that because you have to convert it efficiently enough so you can get deficient after a while. Avoid processed and omega-6 oils. So omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. They provide that, imagine like the fire department has, needs certain resources to be able to put out a fire. Well, that gives fire department what it needs. Omega-6s is just like kindling and matches. Let's just make more fire. Well, because we might need fire every once in a while to repair something, right? Or to respond to an acute infection. We need inflammation. But right now, we were supposed to be 1 to 1 omega-3 to omega-6 evolutionarily. Now we're 25 to 1.
Mm.
Yeah. What kind of foods have the omega-6 oils?
Everything with like vegetable oil, canola oil, sunflower, safflower.
Are you saying we have 25 times more of the 6 than we do of the 3?
We have the ratio 25 to 1 of 6 to 3, correct. So we've gotten way into that pro-inflammatory state. Yeah. And then refined carbs and sugars, those also promote that development of insulin resistance, which can lead to more insulin chronically high, which leads to inflammation. Okay, I'll move on to the next one here. All right, so we're repairing the gut. The gut being one of the main barriers. The gut is not us yet. The space in the gut is not us, right? That's still our outside environment. But the lining of the gut is the barrier to get inside. And it's often only one cell thick between that barrier, that tube, the center of the donut, right? There's nothing in the center of the donut. But then the donut is our tube. And that first layer is one cell thick till we get to the bloodstream. And that one cell layer has these little hairs on them. And there's so much surface area that allows us to absorb and to release and to have all these microbes and all the things that make our colon so ideally healthy. But we need to repair that, especially with regard to immune health, because 70% of our immune cells live there. They're constantly vigilant because it's such a portal of entry. Makes sense. Support barrier health in general, but particularly this is gut barrier with bone broth, glutamine, fiber, and fermented foods. So bone broth and glutamine, those are actually they share common nutrients. So bone broth is high in glutamine. Glutamine is food for and a repair nutrient for the gut lining. Fiber is like fertilizer for your grass, right? You need to fertilize the grass seed you put down. And fermented foods are high in seed, the actual organisms themselves. So you need fertilizer and seed. Fiber, you don't need to just take it on the side. You could, but high fiber foods, crunchy foods. There's soluble and there's insoluble. We can get into that more later, but the point is, I would say, emphasize that modern diets are very low in fiber. Plant foods, plant-based. Plant-based doesn't mean only plants, but the majority of your plate is plants, especially the crunchy ones, the things that don't, you want some that can dissolve and some that you got to crunch, like celery. That's an easy example. You crunch on that, you're not really breaking it all down. There's cellulose, and that's going to stay in that form. And it's basically like little scrub brushes that go down and clean the lining on its way out. But it's food too for these bacteria. And then remove irritants like gluten, dairy, sugar, and alcohol. So if we want to heal the gut, you know how you need to be super careful after you have, say, flu, where you had diarrhea or you had vomiting, and your gut is super sensitive, and you have like no tolerance, no appetite, and you're going to start to eat again, and then you throw it up and go, oh my God, I couldn't tolerate anything. Well, you just try. Why did you eat that? You can't eat a burrito after you just had, flu. Start with soup, like everybody knows, and you find out really quick what you can tolerate. So what do you want? You want like bone broth. You want to like take a chicken, put it in a pot, boil the heck out of it, let all the good stuff come out of the bones, put a little, minimal flavorings in there, some carrots, some celery, and just start there, right? Just sip that raw, a little bit at a time. Why? Because it's high in this stuff. You're feeding the lining, but you're not irritating it. These are irritants. And they also, like sugar and alcohol, both basically the same. Those feed yeast, yeast overgrowth. That's a bad thing. Get a lot of people with yeast overgrowth because of the sugar. And then when that whole ratio gets out of balance, we have certain ones that yeast in particular, yeast overgrowth. You know what the vagus nerve is? Anybody, the vagus nerve? So the vagus nerve is it's one part of the vagus nerve. It brings messages from the gut up to the brain. Okay. It tells the brain what's going on in the organs, not just the gut, but every organ has a vagus nerve component saying, hey, brain, this is what's happening. And yeast can hijack that communication line and say, hey, brain, have more cravings for sugar. It wasn't yeast, I promise. Somebody else said that. And then your brain like, okay, we want more sugar. Great. Yes. And then your yeast is like, yes, do that again, more. It's crazy. I mean, it's that smart. It learned how to hijack our own communication lines. So getting off of sugar is super hard. Why? Because you have these 10-to-1 microbes saying, what are you talking about? You can't switch, take us off. You can't take us off of our dependency, right? You were feeding us. We had a good thing going. Like, no, you were actually destroying me. Sorry, I'm done with you. But then your brain is like, oh, it's very hard to get off sugar. It's like an addiction. Mm-hmm. Everybody's felt that before. Yeah, more to say about that later, but that's an important topic. And then lastly, thanks for Taylor. We want to replenish the reserves. So long term, are you getting the idea of how chronic inflammation can be bad for you? Mm-hmm. And how chronic destruction of your gut lining and the barrier and all that can lead to immune problems, immune challenges. This is way more than just take echinacea, right? I mean, those things are good when you set yourself up for a problem and you need to make your body inhospitable for whatever has invaded you, the virus or what have you, or oregano oil or golden seal root, different nutrients or herbs that can be antiviral, antimicrobial. Those are good to have in your pocket in case you need it, but we don't want to get there.
Lifestyle change.
Yes, you can prevent it. Mm-hmm. And you can be one of the ones who says, what, stuff goes around all the time. I never get it. I used to be the kid who got everything. Today I have a little bit. This morning I woke up rough. Full disclosure. I'm not immune to this just because I can teach it. But the fact is, I was not sleeping enough good quality nights for about 3 nights in a row. So I know this firsthand. Like, yeah, I mean, it can happen at any time. But I don't have nearly what I had as a kid. When I was a kid, I had a trail of tissues behind me. I go to my friend's house. Oh, David was here. He had a little pile of tissue here. Non-stop. My system was constantly in inflammation. I had asthma, flus, colds, allergies every season. Chiropractic helped me turn that around. And then later on, I realized, oh, my nutrition is terrible. Nobody was teaching me that. And my environment was hard because I had mold in my house. My basement was full of mold because we had all these little floods We'd have 1 inch flood in the springtime, and then it would go away. Everything got a little wet and it would go away. But guess what, grew? We do it again next year. And little by little, we're like, okay, this is just my normal. Did my house, and then I moved away, went to college, and then came back home. Wow, I really get sick here. I can't breathe here. It all comes back. Oh, my environment was toxic. So all those different pieces matter, right? So replenishing reserves. You've got to avoid the things that are draining you, right? So the immune system burns energy fast, like we said before, between that 20 to 60% range. And there's key nutrients that get drained. So the immune system and the inflammatory process is constantly activated. Then we start to use up our storage of A, B, C, D, all the alphabet, right? Omega 3s, CoQ10. Who knows what about mitochondria? Yeah. So power plant for the cell. So every community needs a power plant, let's say. Well, without that power plant, the community can't do anything, can't run. So communities were set up in the past when they had windmills. They'd set up on a river, and then they'd have a windmill there to generate some electricity to run the power for the little factory that allowed the farmers to bring their grain. And then, okay, now we've got a little thing going here. We can build a town around that energy, right? In our body, as soon as the mitochondria, a little factory, is sick, there's signals that are released to kill that cell. The body knows we can't have a cell that doesn't have the ability to run to create energy. So when mitochondria die, the cells are done, and they have a cellular suicide mechanism. That happens in brain cells, and that is related to like dementia. That's a heavy topic. So when mitochondria that have this, remember going back to the sugar and the fat, when we are constantly in that sugar burning mode, there's a lot of problems with that. And a lot of sickness or problems with mitochondria happen. When we're constantly stuck with those toxins, mitochondria, oxidative stress and free radicals. So those toxins can create free radical production. That can start to damage the mitochondria. All that can lead to cellular death. But these nutrients like CoQ10 and acetylcysteine, you heard of that? That's a precursor to the body's main antioxidant, NAC. Alpha lipoic acid. That helps to replenish also the antioxidant process. So antioxidants help to gobble up those free radicals. Think about free radicals. So in our town analogy, we have the power plant, and then we have these free radicals that like to blow up the factory, right? They want to, you know what I mean? They throw bombs at the factory. Well, the antioxidants go around and gobble up those crazy ones that try to blow up the factory, and then it keeps it more safe. Copper, zinc, selenium, magnesium, all super important. Magnesium, way underrated. It has involvement with 300 different cellular reactions. So way more than any one thing. Like magnesium is often promoted for relaxation, for sleeping, right? Good for rest and good for helping the muscles to relax. Totally true. But that's like 1 out of 300. It does all these different. But supporting the mitochondria with sleep, exercise, and clean nutrition, right? So that's a huge, huge important factor. Nervous system regulation. So going back to, well, yeah, we need those proper nutrients, but we need to balance out the nervous system. We can't fight or flight forever. We have to be able to turn that off when the threat is gone. And if we're never getting away from the threat, then we have to figure that out. Why is that? What do I need to change about my life? Right? Is it me? Or is it my environment? Is it my relationships? Is it what? Because your body will respond to whatever messages you're telling it. People could be in a jail cell and they could find some peace. They could be in the middle of a battlefield and find some level of calm. Usually it's not the first time that they're there. Usually the first time you're there, you're like, oh, I'm ready. I mean, that's what I imagine. But soldiers, warriors are probably like much more prepared than that. However, you still hear about it, see it in movies. Like, yeah, that is something that's hard to adapt to if you've never been in it. But for us in our modern lifestyle, we are so used to being chronically stressed that we don't even realize that we're stressed. We don't realize what we're carrying. So we need to do some mindfulness, do some meditation, do some prayer that allows you to really sense on the inside the energy that you have. Is that energy agitated energy? Is it calm, healing energy? Can I slow my heart rate down? Can I just say, I'm actually pretty safe here. I don't need to be in fight or flight at this moment. Let that go. Do some meditating, some writing, journaling, gratitude. All those can help you recenter with right now. And some of the chronic stress drivers, like we talked about, spinal misalignments, poor posture, toxins, poor diet, mental overload, inadequate recovery, and then chronic inflammation. And then the flip side of all those, getting your spine rehabilitated, whole foods, movement, meditation, and sleep. All those activate the opposite of fight or flight, which is the parasympathetic mode. So chiropractic advantage. Why is this an advantage? I feel blessed to have grown up in this environment. I grew up with chiropractic care. Um, I was adjusted for the first time when I was 4 years old. It was because I was severely asthmatic, and it was the first thing to ever help me. And I think that anybody who gets a chance to get adjusted has a chance to really correct what runs your body. Make sure it's optimal. If you don't have it optimal, then you're going to have to continue to adapt to that part, always having a deficit or always having an imbalance. And so being able to correct your structure helps the function and the communication restore and helps you actually have a chance to build. And the building is what we're talking about tonight. It's the lifestyle that goes with it. So there's 5 habits. Let me find out over these already. But exercising every day, every part of your body, every joint that can move needs to move its full range of motion every day of your life. If your joint can do this direction, go to its full range of motion every day. You can turn your head to that side, do it. The more you restrict, the more you limit your motion. Instead of going here, you're just going here. Your body says, you don't need that anymore. Shrink it down. Stop spending energy. Stop wasting energy on things that you're not using. Your body's very conservative in that regard. And then later on, you say, wait a minute, I'm getting stiffer. I can't move. I can't do this as much as I could because we haven't been doing it for a long time. Now you want to do it? Yes, please. I want to get it back. It's going to take time, right? You have to work it back in. But it's optimal to keep that going. And the other part of exercise, brain food. Exercise is brain food. It needs to be stimulated. It needs the blood and the nutrients to get up there. Things pool, right? All the blood and nutrients can pool in other parts. We need to freshen the blood, circulating everything. And then the muscles are energy burning centers. We need our muscles to be tuned up, little powerhouses. Those mitochondria, the factories, they start to multiply. Your energy burning capacity multiplies when you do strength training. But to benefit from that, you have to carry heavy stuff. Like heavy stuff that, like, wow, that was heavy. And I did it enough that I sent the signal to my body saying, we need to adapt to that. But if it's just a little more, like, oh, that wasn't too bad. I did it for a long time, 30 minutes of that, but it wasn't too hard, just a little more. Your body's like, nah, I'm not going to adapt to that. You're not serious. But when it's something heavy, the signal goes in like, wow, whoa, right? Now your body's saying, okay, that's serious. And you do it consistently, and then those muscles will really adapt and get stronger. And the older we get, the more we need that signal to be there, especially women.
What about brain exercise?
Similar.
Crossword puzzles,
Similar.
puzzles. I mean,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
body and brain.
Yes. Early in life doesn't require as much, but you need to keep the brain sharp. You need to keep it purposeful. When we retire, when we don't have anything to do, right? Go, I'm going to retire and sit on the couch. Then everything, just like the muscles and the range of motion, it all just shuts down to the lowest common denominator. That's all I need. That's all you asked me to do. So we need to have that purpose for longevity. Foods, whole foods, locally grown, in season, locally ripened. Spinal care, keeping the spine not just released, not just realigned at one vertebra, getting the overall curvatures back, which is what we do here. Happy thoughts. I love that one. Little smiley in there. Happy thoughts, positive thoughts, starting your day with gratitude, finishing your day with gratitude, and then plenty of Z's, 7 to 9 hours. Everybody's different. But the more you can reduce the load on your system, the less recovery you need. For those who are super inflamed, you ever heard somebody say, I sleep 9 hours, 10 hours every day, and I still wake up exhausted. I don't know what's wrong. I'm still always exhausted. I sleep a ton and I could sleep all day long. It's because we're not getting at the root of what is overloading and taxing the system. And it could be any of those things that we just talked about. But in general, that just throws the light on probable inflammation as a cause. All right, next steps. So you can't supplement your way out of chronic stress. There's no like, oh, what's the adrenal formula for that? What's the anti-inflammatory they have to take? Can Advil take care of all this? No, sorry. I mean, what they do, what cortisone, what Advil, what ibuprofen, what they do is they shut down and suppress the whole inflammatory system, but at a cost. It inhibits your ability to repair anything. Body breaks down. It doesn't feel right. You don't have that pain maybe for a little while, but you can't repair. One of the common findings and issues with like ibuprofen and Advil is you get gut problems. The gut lining doesn't, and it wears away the lining of the gut. My mom went to the hospital after collapsing on the floor, taking too much ibuprofen because she had a bleed. She had a gut bleed, and she had lost. We have 13 pints of blood. I was told 13 pints. She lost 6 through a slow bleed. And then her first sign of that was collapse. She went to the ER. They gave her some fluids. Didn't find any of that yet. Sent her home. Gave her some IV. You're dehydrated. You're low on fluids. Yeah, okay. True. 2 days later, boom, fell. Got up, and then another bam. Okay, all right, we're going back. So that was her husband, stepdad. Then they found it. Then they did a blood test. They found that her hematocrit, her concentration of red blood cells was 50% down. So big deal. All the NSAIDs, ibuprofen and the Advil, they kill 16,000 people every year.
Was she taking it? Did she take it all at once or was she taking it over time?
Over time, consistently. And not like a whole, ton of it, just enough of it that it suppresses the healing of that lining and eventually caught on, the edge of an artery, and that did. So, but we can restore this balance not through pills. My message is let's work from the inside out. Let's do it from the way that our body is designed to do it. Try to get back to where we can be. So there's a structural functional inflammation evaluation. The structural functional is basically my chiropractic nerve, spine, structure evaluation. Inflammation we do through a questionnaire, we can do through blood work. You can see, okay, where are you? So all that information can be gathered, even and looking at food. What's your diet like? So this is what's going in. This is how you're reporting your different systems. We have a questionnaire on that. And then looking at blood work, there's certain markers. You may have had it done. We can gather all that. That's part of that if you want to get evaluated that way. I'm going to create a 21-day anti-inflammatory reset. If you want information on that, just I'll look your name and your email so you can send that out. And then just stay in touch with us so that we can keep talking about this. Next month's topic is on Move Well. So we're going to get into movement and that realm. This is more than Eat Well, the chemistry, the chemical stress. We saw that triangle in the beginning. So this is the chemical stress side and how it relates to immune. Next month, we're going to talk about Move Well. So proper movement, exercise routines, how to regain flexibility, kind of like that whole realm. And what do we need to do for exercise? What makes a healthy exercise routine? not all the nitty-gritty for each individual person, but certainly the principles and enough guidelines that you can take. Okay, now I know how to build my routine and make sure I'm plugging in any missing holes from that. Yeah. Um, one more, maybe. Oh, that's it. Okay. So yeah, get evaluated, live well adjusted. We have to keep our eyes on things. If we don't monitor our health before we're sick, before we show up with something chronic, then we're just waiting for a crisis. And our whole healthcare system is based off of crisis care. And we spend most of our dollars in the ER. And it's because most people just say, oh yeah, now I can't take it. I'm going in. Going in where? To the fire department? You know what they use when they put out fires? All of the stuff that they just trash the house. But then you have, all right, they came out of the fire department, came out of the ER. Then what do they say? Well, then go see your primary follow up. Okay, and the primary is going to start from scratch. And ideally, they do an inside out, functional approach, but they don't. They're like, then we parcel you out to farm you out to the specialist who's going to take a very narrow view of just that one part and forget about all the different things. Do I have a beef with that? I do. It's concerning to me because I went through that with my autoimmune diagnosis. I was going in to the ER because I was having a crisis when I thought I was having a heart attack. My heart was beating out of my chest, up and down, all over the place. I'm like, this is erratic. This is crazy. What is that? No idea. Nobody knew. We went to the ER. 5 hours later, they said, you know what? You have the body of an elite athlete. I go, you got to be kidding me. I found nothing. That is not nothing. That has never been there before. There's something. And then 4 doctors later, 2 cardiologists, I fired one of them. The second one said, yeah, maybe go check your thyroid at some point. Here's a script for that, but I don't think that's it. Just need to calm down. Too much exercise. You're overtraining. Okay. I kind of believe you, but it doesn't make sense. Test my thyroid. It's supposed to be below 30 for the antibodies against it. I had 584. That looks like that could be it. And then found out, yeah, you got an autoimmune condition. Like, wow, what does that mean? That means your body's destroying itself. Oh. And then I did another test to see what other organs might be affected. Seven antibodies showing up for different organs. I'm like, I'm going to run out of body.
When was this?
It was in 2015. Yeah.
You lived a lot of life before you got to that.
I lived a lot of life. Yeah. And so again, my point is we want to keep on the front end, right? Being honest with ourselves about how stressed we were. I was going through a divorce. I was self-medicating with triathlons. I did sprint triathlons. So I'd be like pedaling away on the bike, doing my runs, doing my swims, and I loved it. A lot of good endorphins made me feel good, but my system was just overloaded. It was already stressed out emotionally, and then that extra strain from the exercise, too much. And the system was just veering off course. But all of that, I mean, I don't know how I might have done it differently, other than now I know you need to monitor along the way and monitor kind of the whole picture, not just looking for symptoms. Because you can be going off the cliff and you're driving along the highway like, hey, this is fun. And then all of a sudden, bridge is out. Right? So we have to be vigilant on the whole picture. And that's my intent for these classes is to help cycle through so that you guys can take that and apply it. Keep going through the lifestyle stuff to help prevent. It's like going to the cardiologist and says, it's okay to smoke. It's fine. I'll take care of you when the heart problem happens. No, the cardiologist should say, I want you to exercise, eat a better diet, work on your omega-3s. These are the things that should be functional lifestyle recommendations from a cardiologist after the heart attack. Go to the dentist. They should not have the freshly made chocolate chip cookies like my kids, pediatric dentist did. Like freshly made, smelling up the lobby. Like,
Remember the lollipops they got?
Yes.
Right? But you should not be eating that. We should be eating healthier, getting off of sugar. That is me helping you to really win. That's what I want for the highest level. So thank you.